sure. You're listening to
Good morning,
SantaCruzVoice.com.
and welcome to SantaCruzVoice.com, and welcome to Bettina's Buzz. I'm Bettina McBee, and thank you very much for joining me this wonderful Saturday morning, November the 18th. And with me on my cell phone, I have the pleasure of welcoming Natalie Johnston to Bettina's Buzz. Natalie is a volunteer and community science coordinator with the Pacific Grove Museum of Natural History. Good morning, Natalie. Welcome.
Good morning, Bettina, and thank you for having me today.
Well, thank you for joining us. Now, tell us, especially because I was there with you yesterday to walk through the Monarch Sanctuary, which I was looking forward to doing. Tell us about your job there at the museum, the Pacific Grove Museum of Natural History, and with the Monarch Sanctuary.
Absolutely. I work with the fantastic volunteers with the Pacific Grove Museum of Natural History. So we have education programs, the docents who help out with the general public, and we also have community science programs, which if community science is a new term for everybody, this is essentially just science for everyone, that you don't have to have an academic background. You can be anyone of any interest, really, and anybody can be trained up to take data and help monitor the environment or something else. With the Monarch Sanctuary, the Pacific Grove City owns and maintains the city, but my museum helps out by having monarchs there and by doing community science, by monitoring the monarch butterfly population, both within the Pacific Grove Monarch Sanctuary and partnering with other organizations to do a California-wide count every single year.
What was wonderful about coming out there yesterday, and I wanted to make sure, listeners, that I went out to the Monarch Sanctuary there in Pacific Grove, so not only could I meet Natalie, because she's very busy at work there at the museum today, but to get a sense again of the sanctuary and the beauty of it, and to see the wonder of the children. There were a couple of field trips that went through the sanctuary yesterday, and that was fun to watch.
I'm so glad. Those are fun to see children get so excited about insects, about monarchs, and starting to understand that they are a part of nature. So it's so much, it can be very inspiring.
Well, one thing you shared with me yesterday was how monarchs are one insect that nobody has a problem with.
They are so beautiful. And I do find it very striking. Like if you just are on your phone and you search up just a butterfly emoji, what comes up is the monarch butterfly. The monarch butterfly is so iconic, and I love them. They're not pests. They don't eat anything that we care about because their host plant that they eat as caterpillars, milkweed, is toxic to humans and to most creatures, so nobody would really have a problem with monarchs eating milkweed. And as adults, they just feed off of the nectar and flowers. And yeah, they don't swarm, they don't do anything that I think would make people antagonistic towards insects. And I love how beloved monarchs are, how the sanctuary is generally such a peaceful and happy place because everybody who is at the Monarch Sanctuary is there because they love monarch butterflies.
And it's not a very big space, the space there in Pacific Grove. It's a very, at least to my finding, it was a very, I don't necessarily want to say small, but quaint and magical atmosphere that as soon as you walk down the little path, there you are well, literally a sanctuary, but it's just nice to see people sitting on the benches and looking up at the butterflies and the tranquility that you have. And then, of course, there are binoculars there for guests to get a better look at the monarchs. And it's quite breathtaking and very emotional, actually.
I'm so glad. feel that way myself, but I know that I'm a bit biased being, the monarch person. And
Well, if I may
yeah,
say, that was one thing that I found very charming about you, Natalie, is knowing that you're there often. The delight in your face when you would see a cluster and you wanted to make sure that I observed those clusters or the ones flying by, and you had such delight in your face in seeing the monarchs and sharing the knowledge that you have of the monarchs. How did you get involved in this type of career?
my career, I do have a background with invertebrates, but not actually insects specifically. I came from a marine biology background and came to the Pacific Grove Museum after the COVID pandemic. I love volunteers. I love being able to interact with people who are passionate about what they do, and that is what volunteers are. They are donating their time to a cause, to an organization because they feel strongly about it. So the volunteer community is a wonderful one. And
Yes,
I
it is.
also love learning. So when they said, Natalie, a lot of your job involves monarch butterflies, this was about 2 years ago. I was like, well, this is great. And I was I was I was actually a little bit shocked by how much I came to love the monarch butterflies
You're
because
local. You're local to the Monterey Peninsula, right? And you hadn't
I
been to the sanctuary very often yourself. Is that correct? When you were
no, I
young?
avoided it as a tourist location, just like I avoid Cannery Row.
I had to make
And
her
now
say
I
that,
regret
everybody,
having
when she
done
told
that.
me that. But you
Uh,
grew to love that area and the monarchs and the
I
volunteers
do.
and the volunteers as well.
Yes, I think that my organization, the Pacific Grove Museum of Natural History, has just such a wonderful core of people who volunteer with it. We have a team of docents who go out into the sanctuary, and it can be very cold out there, but they're there sharing their love and passion of the monarch butterflies. We have a team of people who help count the monarch butterflies
How
at
do
the
you count them?
sanctuary.
How do you do that?
It's quite a process. Their dedication is amazing because our team goes out at the break of dawn, just as the sun is rising. And the reason that we do this is because we want to make sure that the monarch butterflies, to get an accurate count, we want them when they're not moving. Um, Monarch butterflies are a small little creature that have such a complicated natural history. And one of the things is that they do not fly around when the temperature is under 55 degrees Fahrenheit, which I think is 13 degrees Celsius. And so we make sure that while we are counting them, they're within that temperature range. So if there are any monarch butterflies, when their wings are folded, the tips of their wings make this little triangle point. So that's kind of an easy place of identification. Imagine that you have a single monarch by itself, great, easy to count. Or imagine if you have just along a tree branch of monarchs that are kind of spaced out. Again, you can count them individually by the tips of their wings.
Do you get,
However, what
I'm
Mhm.
sorry, do you get as detailed as if they're male and female? Do you break it down in that way as well?
Personally, I find it very difficult to tell if a monarch is male or female when its wings are folded over. When their wings are open and spread out, it's a bit easier to identify. There are a couple of differences, like the veins, that is, the black stripes on the orange wings of the monarchs.
Hmm.
The black stripes tend to be a little bit wider, um, like they have a thicker marker that's going through them than the females have that, as opposed to the males whose veins are pencil thin. Also, the males have two little dots on their hind wings, their lower wings
Hmm.
close to their body, their abdomen, those two little spots that the females don't have. But theoretically, it's to me, it's harder to tell the difference when their wings are folded. There are some people who have been doing this for decades who can. I'm just not one of them. So no, we don't count if they're male or female, but yeah, but we do know which trees they are on and like the general temperature conditions.
What's the count at the present time?
Well, let's see. We were going to have a count this morning, but we got rained on, and if it's raining and you can't actually see the monarchs, then we can't really do a count. But so the latest count, which was on November 10th, was about approximately 7,604 monarch butterflies at the PG Monarch Sanctuary.
That's wonderful. That is wonderful. Do you know what the count has been at the highest for the sanctuary, or one of the highest counts? As so, there's a way to compare, at least for me, to compare. That sounds like a lot of monarchs, but
It does. And I think that's a really good point, that when you reach such high numbers, it can be hard to draw a good comparison. As it is, the Western monarch butterfly, that is the population that comes to California in the winter, is highly threatened. We know from monitoring them every single year that their population has declined by over 95% within the past 30 years. And the 30 years were just when people started counting them all together. Historically, there would be tens of millions of monarch butterflies across all of California. The reports that I've gotten from people who lived in Pacific Grove as late as the 1980s would say things that we don't see today. Like they would just be biking along Ocean View Avenue and there would just be monarchs hitting their face right and left as they're bicycling, or that they would have to sweep almost piles of monarchs off their doorstep, or they would open up their door and it would seem like their entire garden would fly into the air at once because there were so many monarchs.
But that sounds beautiful, doesn't it? To see your garden go flying away.
Exactly. And then you can see why Pacific Grove, with stories like that, gave itself the nickname Butterfly Town, USA,
yes.
in the 1930s.
So, that it's still a good number, and of course we hope that the numbers will always increase, because one of the great values of monarchs, besides being beautiful, is that you said you informed me what great pollinators they are.
Yes, monarchs, other butterflies, they're among some of the pollinating species that help make flower populations healthy. Of course, the champion pollinators are bees. California has so many species of native bees that also need our help. But I think that monarch butterflies, being so beautiful and being so visible, the actions that we take to help out monarch butterflies are the same ones that would help out other pollinators, the native bees and the other species of butterflies and moths.
And of course, they help us in the system of life to have these monarchs who pollinate and give us joy and bring us happiness, because they are so beautiful. And are they one of the largest species of butterflies? Because I've seen some that just seem so large.
Yes. They are one of the larger species found in North America. It can be a little bit technical. Like there's another species that we have that's called the Western swallowtail. That is also large and beautiful, and it has yellow and black vertical striping. The largest swallowtail would be, the largest swallowtail would be larger than the smallest monarch, but the largest monarch butterfly would be larger than a Western swallowtail. But generally, monarch butterflies are one of the largest butterfly species found in North America.
And when you're taking children through, yesterday there was a field trip coming through. And what was wonderful about you, Natalie, is some children were there with their parents. I think they were probably their parents. Anyway, just kind of asking questions about the butterfly, and just very nice and gently you were right there to give them the information and tell them what the butterfly ate and that one was mature, and answer all their questions. And what I was even noticing, of course, I was paying attention, and different adults who were passing through, admiring the sanctuary, hesitated to listen to what you had to offer. And you're so enthusiastic about doing that, which is wonderful. What are some of your favorite questions about the monarchs that you get?
Oh, that in particular is a very good question. Um, I like sharing with people the migration pathway that the Western monarch butterfly goes through because it is complicated. Their northern range is states like Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and then they come down to coastal California during the winter time, and then they move to inland California and head back up in the spring. One of the reasons I like this fact so much, and then of course you have the eastern population, which is found all across the United States and goes down to Mexico during the winter. That means that every single person in North America either lives in a monarch overwintering site like we do in coastal California, or they live along like a monarch highway like inland California or in the northern grounds, which means no matter who you are or where you live, you have the ability to help out monarch butterflies. And I love having that connection with everybody.
And what are some of the best ways that people can help the monarchs? Is it planting a particular plant, would you suggest, Natalie, or
possibly habitat restoration, especially along coastal California, would be a really good one because, as you noted yourself, the Pacific Grove Monarch Sanctuary is on the smaller side. It's only about 2 acres, and yet it's one of the largest publicly accessible monarch overwintering sites that exist. So habitat loss is one of the primary reasons that the Western monarch butterfly has had such a population decline.
do you? I just want to ask: was the habitat at one point larger? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, historically.
Well, Pacific Grove, the whole city was a habitat at once, right? So
precisely, exactly. All of coastal California was the habitat for the monarch butterflies. But as people came and developed over coastal California, now we just rely on these like fragmented sites. But another thing that people can do is watch out for pesticides, especially if somebody has their own garden. If somebody has their own garden, planting plants that are friendly for monarch butterflies, for instance, flowering plants that have nectar for them to feed off of, or if they're in a location where milkweed is native to, it's not native to coastal California, but if they are in a place that milkweed is native to, planting native species of milkweed. But you also have to make sure that the plants that you are providing for the monarch butterflies aren't going to
endanger something else.
Well, hurt the monarch butterflies.
Okay.
Imagine a poor monarch butterfly coming in to lay its eggs on milkweed and then it just dies because the milkweed has pesticides on it. That would just be so heartbreaking.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I highly recommend checking out like local nurseries who you can actually talk with and ask questions about. Are there systemic pesticides? Was this sprayed with anything? Which generally shopping small is a great thing to do. So shopping with local nurseries to be able to check in with them helps out everything. And of course, everybody on this planet is being affected by climate change, monarch butterflies included. So helping out any actions that one can take against climate change will help out the monarch butterflies as well.
And you've also, I saw that you've also worked for the Santa Cruz Museum of Natural History.
For a brief period of time, before the pandemic. They are wonderful people.
And also, of course, people here in Santa Cruz can go to Natural Bridges to the Monarch Trail on West Cliff and admire the monarchs there.
Exactly.
And I'm sure, because you work in a type of sisterhood with their museum, so I'm sure too they would love having some volunteer or advocacy for the monarchs at the Natural Bridges Sanctuary. So,
absolutely.
And you also, Natalie, you spent some time working at the Monterey Aquarium. Did you enjoy that?
Oh, absolutely. The Monterey Bay Aquarium's mission is to inspire conservation of the ocean, and every place that I've been able to work out since also has a similar mission of nature conservation and stewardship. So that's been very nice altogether.
Because if I remember correctly, yesterday you mentioned a lot of your background is in marine biology.
Mm-hmm.
So the aquarium was a haven for that.
Oh, yes. The Monterey Bay Aquarium has a great connection to the ocean and has done some fantastic research. Their Seafood Watch program with promoting sustainable seafood, highly recommend checking that out. And I love the chance to be able to learn. So being able to move to natural history museums to get more of that terrestrial, the insects, the birds, the plants, and everything else has simply been a delight.
And I read, because of course, Natalie, you have a nice extensive background. I looked you up. You're a certified interpreter. What is that?
Oh, interpretation is a form of communication that's used widely with museums, state parks. It's essentially public speaking so that you could take complicated science issues and help connect whoever you are speaking to with it on a level that everybody can understand. So that's what interpretation is about. Mostly just a way of having good informal education
and a way to get the information properly to the audience so they can understand it. That's what it sounds like to me.
I hope so. Not being too technical. Exactly.
But also because some people are very technical and can say more about butterflies than that they're just gorgeous, and we know that we need them. Like a person like me who has the monarchs come in my backyard, and I see them sunning. We have we named her Mariposa, but anyway, we have several monarchs that will come, and we watch them sun in the backyard, and we have other birds that we just enjoy, and getting the plants and encouraging that and encouraging that well-being around. So
I love it.
And living in this area, I think you would agree, Natalie, it's almost just natural to get involved in these type of programs that go on. For example, when my daughter was young and living on the Monterey Peninsula, we'd go to Parents' Place. I'd take her to Parents' Place, which was literally like right next to the Monarch Sanctuary, and it's just so easy to take your child from one wonderful activity by tide pools or down by the beach or Levelers Point, or then go to the Monarch Sanctuary. And then, we did spend a lot of time in the Pacific Grove Natural History Museum, and that's a great place to go. I walked in there as well after I met you at the sanctuary, and they had children lined up and listening to different presentations. And it's been years that I've been in there, and it's changed, which I can only hope that it would. But for 20 years, it's been a good while that I'd actually walked in there since my daughter was young. But are you involved in changing displays or coordinating certain types of curriculum or discussions to happen at certain times in both the museum or the sanctuary?
I wouldn't say that my job is particularly around the exhibits or the education programs, but I am very fortunate to be on the education team and our team of educators are very passionate, inspiring individuals. And we do have a number of field trips that all come into the Pacific Grove Museum for free, both at the Monarch Sanctuary and here on site at the museum. And then we also have student-based community science programs that go out to the tide pools and the local rivers. So that's quite wonderful. And everything about the museum is designed to just spark that curiosity and wonder of the natural world, and then help everybody realize that all of us can be stewards of nature and help out this beautiful area that we live in.
And it's not difficult because we can just start in our own backyards.
I think so. And I think this area is also quite fortunate to have a lot of community action, which is something I particularly admire about Santa Cruz, how the whole community will rally together to protect an area of wilderness, to do beach cleanups or other such actions of stewardship. And I find that very inspiring.
And what are some of are there any upcoming programs in particular that you want to share? I mean, the Monarchs.
Oh, sure.
The Monarchs, their season, I guess I can say, their peak season of being in the sanctuary is for how long?
Well, that's the fun thing about monarch butterflies is that they come to stay in coastal California for the entire winter. They arrive, we first start seeing them at the beginning of October, and their numbers steadily increase until from November through January is considered their peak season. Their population will steadily start to drop until around mid-February or so. Then when mid-February, they'll start preparing for the next generation to continue the migration back north. And even though there are fewer monarchs then, they're very active as they are flying around. Exactly. They essentially lead each other on races to see who is the strongest flyer.
So viewer.
Part of the nonprofit Think Local First organization.
The numbers all go to 11. Look, right across the
admirers
board,
of the monarch
11.
essentially have plenty of time to visit
Exactly.
the sanctuary in Pacific Grove or the sanctuary here in Santa Cruz through full several months, through January into February.
That is true, yes.
And you were going to mention some particular programs that you have going on?
Oh, well, the Monarch Sanctuary will continue to be there active until the end of Monarch season. This on Saturday, November 25th, the museum is hosting Science Saturday, which is a program we do on the last Saturday of every month. Free admission for the day, and each one is generally themed about a different aspect of natural history. So November 25th will be our Monarch celebration, and it's called Monarch Madness. And
fun. That sounds fun.
It's going to be so much fun, and we'll even be joined by a wonderful group of people from Natural Bridges in Santa Cruz, a band called the 5 M's.
Oh,
so
wow, there you go.
I recommend checking them out.
Put that on your calendar. Next Saturday. What time is that again?
It will. Oh, you're right. I did not actually say. It will be from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m.
10 to 3, next Saturday.
Exactly, yes.
And it will be at the museum?
Exactly, at the Pacific Grove Museum of Natural History.
And that's just right in downtown, just off of downtown. Can't miss it. Can't miss the museum. It's got the big whale out front.
That we do. We have Sandy the whale.
So just a little bit more about your background, because I want to bring up that you went to Davis and you have your BS from Davis. How did you like attending UC Davis, Natalie?
Oh, I think UC Davis was a wonderful campus. It has a lot of place to be able to roam. They've got many different great programs. It can get hot in the summer, so make sure that you don't mind the Sacramento weather. But they also have air conditioning, which is something that we often don't have in long coastal California.
That's true, yes.
But yeah, I loved my time up at Davis.
And did you find that there are many women studying your field of biological science? Were there very many females?
That's a very good question. I find that I tend not to be very observant unless it's something with nature. I have noticed that within the nonprofit industry, like museum studies, and so it does tend to predominate with women as opposed to men. So yeah, I think in the career there can be some divide up, but I'm not sure what I noticed at Davis particularly. Women do tend to they do tend to populate more the veterinary science side, which was a side that I was often amongst. So,
veterinary
great
science.
Question.
Oh,
exactly.
Thank you. So, and then as far as the PG Museum, what are some of the things that you look forward to every day? Because you're educating people, so there's always going to be something new, I know. But what are some things that motivate Natalie that you like to share?
I am motivated by the volunteers that I am so fortunate to be able to work with. For instance, one of my volunteers named Stephanie, she has been counting monarchs every single year since 2012, and she's always there right at dawn every single week.
Stephanie was there yesterday.
Exactly.
With
she
her monarch
does
earrings on and running the field trips and just enthusiastic. And
yes, and
wonderful.
I have some volunteers who have been with the museum for 20, or another one, Mary, who's been with us for 35 years. I have volunteers who also help out with Baynet or other community programs, who help out with Audubon, and I find their dedication to be very inspiring.
Well, volunteerism is huge in this area on the peninsula, all over the Monterey Peninsula and Santa Cruz. I myself have done a huge amount of volunteering on the peninsula. It's a great way to meet people. And again, as you're saying, there's so many causes and very interesting people who give of their time to volunteer and give back to the community. Is essentially what it is, giving back and learning new things and inspiring others to volunteer. What are some of your ways that you help to encourage people to be a volunteer and take part in the sanctuary and the museum?
Oh, yes. One thing I try to do is to make the volunteer programs as accessible as possible. One thing that I've noticed before in previous organizations is that the requirements to volunteer with them were so much that I, as a full-time employee, would not be able to give them the time that they were demanding. Because it's not just work, there's also, family and having to take care of one's household and everything else. So by trying to make volunteerism more flexible, more accessible, to have online options instead of only hosting trainings during the day on weekdays, trying to make sure that there are as many options as possible. And community science is often done on one's own time. It's pretty much whenever you can get out there, whenever you can take the data, you do, which I love so much, because volunteerism shouldn't just be for a demographic who is privileged enough to be able to give so much of their time. Whatever somebody is willing to donate for a cause, that is enough, and we are grateful for it.
So what are some of the give the listeners here at SantaCruzVoice.com some ideas of how they can be a volunteer?
Well, for the Santa Cruz Museum, one of my favorite things they have is their gardening program, which they'll regularly do on Saturday mornings to help out the garden that they have, which is wonderful plants. In the Pacific Grove Museum, we also have a gardening days that happens on the first Saturday of every month in the morning. Our community science programs that we have in next year, around March or so, we'll begin the Black Oyster Catcher Monitoring Program.
Black Oyster Catcher?
Yes,
Okay.
it is a shorebird that, similar to the monarch butterfly, you can track its population and with that be able to extrapolate, that is, see how the rest of its habitat is doing. This is a program that takes place both in the Monterey Bay area and in the Santa Cruz area. So that one is also great. You go out on your time, pick a pair of shorebirds to watch, and just essentially report on how they're doing. Let's see. So that one's really great. There's another partnership that we have that's called MPA Watch, or Marine Protected Area Watch, that's monitoring our local marine protected areas. And of course, there's the butterfly count, which is currently in process, but highly recommend that everybody keep it on their calendar for next year, because that's one that's in Santa Cruz, that's in the Monterey County, that's all across California, going out to all of the sites where monarch butterflies are known to visit and simply counting them so that we can see how the population has changed over time and what factors contributed, and then what we can all do to help them out.
That's very encouraging. So we encourage anyone who's interested to be involved in the count of the monarchs next year, so they can find out more information and look into volunteerism if this interests you, and you can help count, and hopefully next year the count will be much larger.
We'll see. And of course, actions of stewardship, of doing things that are good for the environment, habitat restoration, actions against climate change, going pesticide free in your own gardens, and supporting companies that do the same, that are pollinator friendly. Even if you don't have the time to be able to volunteer, of course you can help out simply by taking actions to help out the natural world.
That's a good point. That's a great point. And another interesting point you made yesterday when we were sitting talking in the sanctuary is you said you always find yourself, if you see anybody who has, say, monarch earrings, or you mentioned a tattoo, because the monarch is a symbol for people in different cultures, and it makes you want to strike up a conversation. So you did mention, for example, about a gentleman, if I remember right, Natalie, who had a tattoo, and you made comment of what he told you about that.
Oh, yes. Monarchs do tend to be very personal to people, and I'm very curious and want to be able to learn more about that. Monarchs are often considered a symbol of transformation because they go from that caterpillar to the adult stage, or to the butterfly stage. They're also often considered a symbol of strength because monarchs, as this tiny insect that only weighs half as much as a paperclip, are still able to fly hundreds of miles during their migration. And let's see, and then for that same reason, they're considered a sign of perseverance. And then down in Mexico, they also have a great symbolic significance as well. Often that souls are monarch butterflies. And so this is something that I just find so beautiful altogether.
It makes me think of the Feast of Lanterns in Pacific Grove, the pageant, and at the end, anyway, they turn into monarch butterflies, and they fly away. The Feast of Lanterns. I think they've stopped having the Feast of Lanterns, but I won't. I think. Have you you never went to Feast of Lanterns? The fireworks, Natalie?
Well, we also in May, there's the Walk of Remembrance, which I just think
Ah,
is a very wonderful way to support the Chinese community that has lived in Pacific Grove and faced such persecution and often misunderstanding of their culture. Uh, and so while the I think by attending the Walk of Remembrance that will take place in May, that's a fantastic event that people can attend.
well, that's something to look forward to. Another
Yes.
good thing to look forward to in Pacific Grove. So you can tell us again, just bring us up again next Saturday. There's going to be an event, your event that you're going to host.
Exactly. Science Saturday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., all about monarch butterflies at the Pacific Grove Museum.
I'm writing this down. And you're working in conjunction with the Santa Cruz, with the
Well, the 5Ms, the local Santa Cruz band, are such wonderful people, and they'll be
5Ms.
joining us for part of the day.
Well, that'll be fun. And will you have arts and crafts? What's going to
That
happen?
we will.
Arts and crafts. Will there be drawing of monarchs?
I think so.
Some
Yeah,
coloring
well,
of
we've got a monarch migration game that takes place in the garden, and of course, I'll be putting up as much monarch information as I can because, as you can tell, I do love sharing information about monarch butterflies.
And that's great, and that's why you're here, Natalie, because you have so much wealth of information to share. And when we met at the sanctuary, one of the first things Natalie wanted to make sure of is that the poster was up that for people to be careful even where you step, because not all the monarchs are up in the trees.
It's true. Monarchs are generally trying to rest in their clusters in the trees just to hang out during the winter time and stay safe. But sometimes they do fall from their clusters. And if the weather's cold enough so that they can't yet fly, they'll remain on the ground. And when monarchs have their wings folded, they don't have the bright, vibrant orange that we are accustomed to. Instead, the underside of their wings is almost a palish gray, and they can often resemble the leaves on the ground. So it's good for people to not only be looking up at the monarchs, but also make sure that they're looking down in case that there are any monarchs that have fallen on the path.
So the monarch's main predator is pesticides, since they've been eating the milkweed, which I didn't know that until yesterday when you said that so their beauty is actually a reflection of toxic food that they eat to therefore protect them. So they don't really have anyone to worry about but us. Is man really pesticides or things of that nature?
Habitat loss.
Yes, so that's their main threat, is because no one's going to eat them.
Well, by far the biggest population drop is due to human impact.
Yes.
While monarchs can have some predators, for instance, like there's some species of squirrel or ground animals that may eat monarch butterflies, scrub jays and other corvids, they know that there are butterflies that mimic monarchs that aren't toxic. So if they see one, they may take a small little nibble just to see if it tastes toxic. And if it doesn't, then they'll go ahead and eat it. But if they do get that bad taste, then they'll leave it alone and the monarch butterfly can continue to fly.
Oh, that's pretty good. There's some butterflies that pretend like they're monarchs not to get eaten. Well, they try to be as grand as monarchs not to get eaten.
We've got painted ladies, we've got West Coast ladies. There are also red admirals that have very similar patterns. In other parts of the United States, the viceroy is a very good monarch mimic. And The painted lady has been so effective that I've seen newspapers accidentally photograph painted ladies when they meant to be talking about monarch butterflies. They tend to be smaller. They have a different flight pattern. They also, don't migrate or live as long as the monarch butterfly, but they do look similar, have a similar orange and dark coloration.
So, and monarchs only live a few months, is that correct?
Which is amazing for a butterfly.
Like what, 6 months? That is amazing. It sounds sad to me. What, 8 months or something?
Well, imagine, that insects in general don't live very long. And most butterflies, once they get to their adult stage, when they're no longer caterpillars, they generally only live to be a few days, maybe a week or two. So the monarch butterfly normally lives 6 to 8 weeks total, which is very long-lived for a butterfly. However, when they migrate down to California, exactly 6 to 8 weeks is their normal lifespan, and that's very good for a butterfly. That toxicity that they get from eating milkweed, having less fear of predation, means that they can live longer. However, their migration that brings them to California, it's only one generation that's staying here throughout the entire winter. So one single generation of monarch butterflies every year, instead of living 6 to 8 weeks, lives 6 to 9 months, which is simply incredible for a butterfly.
Yes, that is incredible. So everybody, you have to go to the sanctuaries and see these generations of monarchs that you won't see again. They come and they go. And we need to enjoy their beauty when we can, especially when they come right to our backyards. And it seems silly not to go see them, or to at least marvel in them at least once. Right?
And if you aren't able to see the monarchs, then take some time to visit the outdoors in whatever area that you live. Because we are so fortunate to have so much beauty right in our backyard.
Yes, we are. So, Natalie, if people want to look up the Pacific Grove Museum of Natural History or information about the monarchs, where should they go? Where can they pull out their phone right now and look you up?
They could look up the Pacific Grove Museum's website, which would be pgmuseum.org. And I've got a little tab that has monarch viewing that I keep up to date with the latest monarch numbers. And we've got an events calendar to show all the different events coming up. And there's also something that'll show our latest MC Gives campaign to help refurbish our native plant garden and all sorts of other great things.
That sounds great. And what else do you have planned today, Natalie, there at the museum?
Today at the museum, I'm going to be fortunate to be on site with the museum, interacting with the great volunteers and visitors that come by.
And now that it's not raining, well, at least it's not raining out of the window here at SantaCruzVoice.com, will you be going out to the sanctuary? Because you did mention you couldn't go out earlier because it was raining.
Possibly. I hope to be able to spend some time there this weekend.
And what do the monarchs do when it's raining? I found myself in the middle of the night. I could hear the rain, and I was like, what are the monarchs doing? What do they do? Just stay in a tighter cluster?
They stay in their clusters, yes. So we see the monarchs clustering, and that particular the way that clustering works is that when the monarchs are all together, it's almost like shingles on a roof. When the wind and rain hits them, instead of blowing a single monarch off, instead the wind and rain kind of cascade down. So by clustering, monarchs are able to stay more protected from the elements than they would if they were by themselves. In addition, monarchs are looking for the perfect tree, the one that provides them with the best protection from the wind and rain, but also can provide them with good access to sunlight. And that's why you get such large clusters, is that butterflies found that perfect tree, and then others join it, and everybody recognizes that this tree is the one that has what they are looking for. And that's how you get those beautiful chandelier-like just monarchs dangling from the trees, from the lace lichen.
Yes, that's a beautiful description. A chandelier of monarchs. That is what they look like. And what is their favorite tree?
Strangely enough, monarchs don't come to the same tree every single day or even every single year. This year, they've been favoring a Monterey pine that's very close towards the pathway along the Monarch Sanctuary, which makes them very visible to visitors, which I'm grateful for. For all I know, the monarchs are doing this to be visible to them, and it's not just about safety. But I don't know. It would be fun if they were specifically there for the visitors.
Do you feel, Natalie, that when you're in the sanctuary in your own moment, do you feel like the monarchs know you?
No, I can't say that they do, but I'm grateful for them.
I think they know you. I think because you're an advocate for them. That's just my heart. I think that they probably see Natalie coming and know that she's going to give good information about them and help them to thrive, like the other many volunteers who work there at the Pacific Grove Monarch Sanctuary. Well, Natalie, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be on SantaCruzVoice.com this morning with me, to be on Bettina's Buzz. It's been quite a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, sure. Thank you. And again, listeners, we encourage you to go out to either the Natural Bridges Monarch Trail and see the monarchs there. That's on West Cliff. Or to go to the Monarch Sanctuary in Pacific Grove, which is on Ridge Road right there, just down Lighthouse near Parents Place. Can't miss it. You really can't, because there's a big Butterfly Inn hotel that's close to that. But again, Natalie, thank you so much. And those of you who have time, please attend their event next Saturday. I'll remind you about it next week here on Bettina's Buzz. You have a great day, Natalie. Thank you.
My pleasure, everybody. Thank you so much.
And as I close out Bettina's Buzz this morning, I want to remind all of you that today at MK Contemporary Art, there will be a showing. We had Rose and Melissa were on with guests with me just recently here on Bettina's Buzz. So I want to remind everybody again, it starts at 4 o'clock today. MK Contemporary Arts. The name of the show is Broadsides, and it's the pairing of artwork and poetry. And there's a number of artists that will be there to show their work and read their poetry, and it would be wonderful if you could attend and go and say hello to Rose and say hello to Melissa. And again, MK Contemporary Art is located at 703 Front Street here in Santa Cruz. And again, thank you so much for taking time to join me on Bettina's Buzz this morning on SantaCruzVoice.com. I hope everybody out there goes out and has a great Saturday. And as you're going out, enjoying the day, and hopefully maybe we'll have some more rain, please remember to pray for peace as you go throughout your day, and have good thoughts for all of us who need it, and keep up to date with what's going on at SantaCruzVoice.com. Please visit our website. We have a number of really wonderfully talented program managers with their different shows, and there's something for everybody here at SantaCruzVoice.com. So please check out our website. Take a look at some of the voices that are there. I know Michael Jacoby will be coming up soon. So again,